All right, guys, we are back at Matt's house. So we've got Matthew Poes. He's going to be doing a calibration. This video isn't going to be a step-by-step walkthrough tutorial. Really, we just want to pick his brains on what goes into a professional calibration. So this is a normal room. You can see this is kind of it's above average home, but it's not a dedicated space. We don't have any acoustic panels on the wall or anything. It's a full per-listen system. So I'll just walk you around the room while he's getting set up. So we've got the per-listen R series here, our subwoofers. I believe we've got, is he still rocking the Marantz? Nope. So right now he's actually got the Premier amplifier as well as the processor. So that'll be a little bit different. I believe it uses Direct Live. So this is 3 up front, left, center, right, dual subs, 2 surrounds back here, and then we've got 4 in the ceiling. So we got a 5.2.4. So Matthew's gonna work his magic. We're gonna have some fun. Like I said, not a step-by-step tutorial walkthrough, but he's getting set up with his laptop. We'll take some measurements, and what I would love to do is just kind of pick his brain on what goes into a calibration. Maybe what are some things that he saw in this room? What did the measurements tell him? And is there anything that we can do to improve the sound quality here? So it's gonna be a fun day.
Naturally, yes, but we tuned it out.
Yeah, okay. Good to know.
So any kind of excitement, get rid of it.
If it sounds fun, just turn it down.
Matt likes plain Jane, no high end.
Well, let's start, I guess, getting some baseline.
2000 hertz sine wave.
I'm sure if we were to go, we could try it later. If we were to go into REW and actually do like a room, the room simulator, lets you see the modes, and we properly did this room for what it is, because it's open here, it's open to the kitchen, we'd probably find that that's not the best location, that there's a different place to put it. The problem is the best location is probably something weird, like way over, where you're walking in over there or something, and it's not something you would do. Or like we have this happen a lot, like ideally you want 2 in the front or more and 2 in the back. So what's back? We're gonna put subwoofers into kitchen cabinets?
Right.
So you end up with this, you have to be practical.
I put one on the side of the couch.
Yeah, in the past he's had one right here.
Try to use the wireless, and then it was nuking my whole wireless network.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. We've had a lot of issues with those wireless systems.
Yeah,
We're typically better with wireless.
I've used them before, but like it would totally, and I bought the whole Ubiquity system, thought I could isolate it, just grenade the whole system.
Yeah. Not totally shocked by that. All right, well, we're going to do a few more measurements just to get a better sense of what we're dealing with, and then we'll go into the Dirac and actually do some proper recalibration of it.
So Matthew, you don't use the standard like UMIC 1. I see this is a little bit different setup over here. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, my preference is to use a better quality mic. You can do a perfectly good calibration with a UMIC 1 as long as you recognize that it's accurate between 20-25 hertz and like 15 kilohertz. Okay. I really wouldn't give it too much, even with the calibrations that are done. It's not a stand-in for something like this. The other problem with those is that they're relatively inexpensive, mass-produced polymer capsule microphones.
Right.
So for your average DIYer, perfectly good. They're pretty accurate, they work well, but they do age over time and they don't travel well. Mm-hmm. This uses a nickel diaphragm. This thing will give you the exact same response for 50 years, probably more than that.
And what is that one?
So this is a PCB microphone. So this comes from a company called PCB Piezotronics. People that work in any sort of lab testing industry that uses accelerometers would probably know this company because that's what they're most known for. They're owned by Amphenol, and they are like the US equivalent, for those who know high-end stuff, of the B&K or I'm trying to think of the other brands, Gras, some of those brands. Like those are like really high-end lab companies in Europe. This is our equivalent of that. And you would find these used in like government labs quite a bit. They're also used for acoustics. I like them because actually, amazingly enough, compared to the US or the European counterparts, these are cheaper for the same quality. So they're not cheap, but they're cheaper.
How cheap are we talking? $1,000?
So with the standard capsule, I believe you can get into one of these for around $1,700. This has a 1/4 inch capsule, and it's a special version. And there's also a lab certification on this one. So with the lab certification that you do every couple of years and the 1/4 inch capsule that I have on this one, because I have the 1/2 inch as well, this one would be more like $3,400.
Okay.
I
And
like it.
so you've taken your first measurement, I'm assuming. And what are you just seeing just initially in this room?
We're seeing pretty awesome flat frequency response here, Mike.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people look at us and be like, oh no, that's a mess. But realistically, that's what you'd expect to see from a good speaker in a room like this. So we probably should turn Dirac off and just see what it's doing on versus off.
Okay.
But what I'm seeing is something that's typical of what I'd expect out of this Per-Listen R7T speaker. It's a relatively good flat response for a single mic position. Like all I did is took one sweep in one position. We're going to do a moving mic average actually next, and that's going to let us see a little bit more of a spatial average in the area where your head would be. And we're going to see some of those peaks and dips smooth out a little bit. And that will help me zero in on what is like a weird artifact of being here versus what is actually a part of the contribution of the room and the speakers themselves, because that's the stuff we can EQ. The more random stuff that just happens to be happening right there at that capsule, that we're not going to touch it. Dirac isn't going to touch it, and we don't care about it. It's why things like spatial averages are so valuable.
I'm excited for the R7C, this new big center to come out.
Yeah.
This center feels like it's the weak point in my system.
It'll be better, I'm sure. Whether it really is or not, you'll think it's better. So it's going to be all right.
It'll be bigger. Bigger's better.
So what I'm going to do is actually put this like this for now and kind of prep myself for it. I have to walk around here. So we're going to set this up to just average, we don't want 1/3, we're going to do like 1/6. That's another thing. A lot of people get really hung up on having to have like the finest resolution. Our ears don't hear that way. So when we're trying to EQ systems, that can be a detriment because it's going to cause us to focus in on imperfections that we shouldn't be correcting and we can't actually hear. So 1/6 octave is what I use. It's what a lot of my colleagues use. It's closer. I mean, yes, there are versions of smoothing that are psychoacoustic, but for an RTA, what we're going to do is 1/6 octave, and that's pretty industry standard. We're going to do forever for the averaging, and 128 is okay for the FFT. That's nobody cares.
Do you have to self-teach on all this, or is there coursework?
I mean, there's people who've done courses over the years on it. I don't know. I learned myself. I'm that kind of person. When I did stuff like this in college, they didn't really do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's a good question because there's like an ISF certification. Is there an equivalent for this?
yeah, I mean, I think that they would be upset if I didn't mention them. HAA does something like that, and you can become HAA certified, and they'll teach you about acoustics, they'll teach you about taking measurements, and it helps. I do think that even with those courses and certifications, a lot of the level that I have and some of my colleagues that are at my level have comes more from practice, because I think there's only so much you can learn, and there's only so much you can even teach in those courses. Like the reality is, you probably would need to take the equivalent of a, call it semester-long college course for every individual piece of this. Like, what is pink noise and how does it work? To really understand that, it's not a 1 hour thing.
Yeah.
To really understand FFT and what that is, that's a math course, and you have to really, I think, take the course to understand it. What does the FFT length have to do with what you see on the measurements? What is averaging and how does that work?
But what was the resource? I mean, what is the documentation? Are there been books written on
There's
this?
definitely, yeah, there's lots of books.
The textbooks.
But I think you have to be really good at translating things, because nobody wrote a book on how do you use REW to do like X measurement and then go into grave detail on that. So a lot of that, I mean, there are, when I say that, there are lots of forum posts, there's lots of little white papers that have been written, but in terms of like academic courses, nobody has like a properly vetted book that's been written on some of those very specific things. So that comes from just understanding how, for instance, fast Fourier transform FFT is used in the audio industry, what its purpose is for converting what this is capturing as pressure on a microphone capsule converted to a voltage into a frequency response. I mean, there's some really deep stuff I can show you guys just to show it. Your average person doesn't need to know that kind of stuff, but this is a very sophisticated tool that's available for free. A lot of people don't realize just how sophisticated it is. I see it actually gets picked on sometimes by pros, and I think the things they're saying aren't true. Like, they don't actually understand what this product is and how it works. The science suite method that it uses that we use to measure frequency response is based on Farina's method. It's an Italian researcher, has a PhD in acoustics, and it is considered the de facto standard as the best approach for capturing transfer functions. It's what's built into this for free, available to anybody. It's got the ability, I can do noise floor measurements on this thing where I use 2 microphones that are pointed to each other, and I can actually average out noise using a special kind of coherent cross-correlation method that up until like a couple of years ago, you would have been buying like either advanced math software that you could code to do that, or spending tens of thousands of dollars on something that has it baked in. It's here for free. Like, it's just, you have to know how to use it. It wasn't designed for that, but the feature exists, and if you know how to leverage it, you can. So I think, like I said, a lot of it comes from do the basic coursework, learn the basic underlying principles in science, then practice it in the real life and learn to translate between the two.
Interesting.
So this tells us really useful information. So up here, there were like some big peaks and dips, and down here we don't see those anymore. But we do see that there's some elevated sound energy right here in that 2K to 5K region that we also saw here. It's a lot less pronounced, which is helpful because if I had EQ'd this, I would have way overcompensated.
So the top line was your like exact measurement. This one is a average measurement
It's a
by you
spatial
moving
average,
it.
yeah. So we can see, we also see a peak here at around 15 kilohertz that we see here too.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't know what's causing that. I want to turn off Dirac and see.
Could it be the glass?
But no, this is something else. And I don't know what's causing it. We're going to dig in a little bit more to figure that out. But we can see it's in both of them. So it's clearly real. And we see a peak and a dip here, and we see a peak and a dip here. So whatever it is something legit.
So this is, so your output is post Dirac that Eric and I did when we were playing around in here.
We need to figure out what's going on with the Dirac, because it could be, so what microphone was used when you did Dirac originally?
Probably you mic 1.
Yeah, the NAD.
Little
Oh,
So
that's
those
right.
things have like no good, like it's not a good response up this high. It may have actually had some sort of a dip in its response that this thing tried to compensate for. So that's why I use that microphone.
But didn't y'all, on the primary, did you do the 300 and below?
I don't think so. I think I left it. I think, because we did a lot of work in that 4K range.
Okay.
So the other thing that we've got here, so there was a peak and a dip here, and we see some evidence of it here, but we can see it's way less pronounced here than it is there. So same thing, like if I had tried to EQ this,
Right.
I would have overcompensated for reality.
Makes sense.
Now we see though, all of this matches like perfectly. There's no difference. So it's interesting because what that means is that that area, this effect is dominating. So we can kind of see, like we can even look at it against the target curve and see that there's a nice little target rise in the base here.
Right.
But you're kind of, you're hitting like a peak area around, what is that, 50 hertz? And then we're rolling off. This should be using these subwoofers right now. If these are all base optimized or base managed. If they're not base managed, that might explain what we're seeing. But this tells me that we're not getting the kind of bass extension that I would expect from these speakers. In fact, I've measured these exact speakers and the S7Ts, and I typically see bass down to like 20 hertz. And we're not getting that here. So we need to do a little bit of investigation. This is probably like the distance between the speaker and the wall or something like that. Like that's just a weird dip that's caused by who knows what.
Which one?
This right here.
The one that goes
40 hertz.
real far down right there.
But everything we're seeing, like this should come back up more than it is. So what I probably would do is within Dirac, try to knock that down.
There, wiggled it.
Yeah,
There we
good
go.
enough. Didn't like us doing that. We're probably going to try to knock all this down and then raise the whole thing up. But we need to like make sure the subwoofer levels are correct. We need to make sure everything is as good as it can be before we get into like what's causing this and how we can play with that in the target curve. That's another common mistake is everybody tries to correct everything with EQ. A lot of this may actually be fixable with just level setting. Like the subs may not be the right level. It could be as simple as that.
I probably have them juiced.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not seeing any real deep bass. So that's the thing I think I need to figure out right now is why don't you have any
Maybe
deep
that's
bass?
why one of my biggest complaint, I'm like, these subs suck.
Yeah.
They don't suck, so I think we just gotta get the level set.
Yeah, these are R210s, so the R series.
Yeah, I mean, dual 10-inch drivers, that's about a 15-inch driver in equivalent area, two 10s. Two 10-inch drivers with 20 millimeters of X-Max is, I would call it industry standard to a typical company's upper end 15-inch sub.
Yeah.
These should be as good as, if not better, than any typical 15-inch sub from anybody else with a bunch of advantages like better DSP, better limiters, and lower distortion.
Alright.
So if they feel like
So
they
they don't
suck,
suck.
we got to set it up right. Like there's
So
something.
I suck, they don't. Is
Well,
what you're saying.
We don't know yet. We'll find out.
I mean, it may not be enough for you, but they don't suck,
Yeah.
for sure.
So Matthew, one thing I've kind of noticed is, we're always told you got to be really particular, have this thing 100% 90 degrees straight up to the sky. It doesn't appear like it's straight up all the time, and sometimes you're angling forward.
Probably you guys should. I'm not for a reason. When you do a slight forward angle, you get a little bit better bias towards the high frequencies towards the front speakers.
Okay.
And what can happen is that even though you can use correction filters for 90 degrees, these speakers are actually on axis basically, or close to on axis to this microphone. So what can happen is this gets a big boost in the highs. This doesn't, but your ears aren't hearing the way this microphone was.
Right.
So one of the tricks is you can do a little bit of a forward bias.
just a slight tilt forward.
This is a more omnidirectional mic though, even than other 1/4 inch capsules. So I can fudge this a little bit more and be in better shape. I will also very carefully evaluate this later to make sure that whatever it did in the highs wasn't because of that 90 degrees. So like you do have to go back and check it. 'Cause
Sure,
it
and
doesn't get
verify.
it right.
Okay. Cool. I just happened to notice that. That was interesting.
But so far, it looks like you're just getting kind of a general idea of what we're doing. You're not getting into like hardcore, detailed calibration yet.
Not yet. That's the next step. And that's because if I did that without knowing where we're at,
Yeah.
it'd be really hard to know what's what.
All right, Matthew, we just finished doing running calibration on each of the microphone positions. How many positions did you run in this setup?
I think it was a total of 8.
Okay. So where are we at now in this step? I've seen you make some small changes on the EQ, or
So we set the target curve, and there's 2 ways you can do target curves in Dirac. You can set the target curve as shelves, which realistically that's what most people should be playing with. That's the best way to get the general shape of the response the way you want it, and let Dirac kind of do the rest. I did convert the LCRs to data points, which is the other thing you can do, which allows you to go in and fine tune the actual shape of those data points to match some things better. And I've done a couple little corrections to better follow the speaker's response where I want it to, but not everywhere. So I'm going to make a couple other adjustments, but this is just a baseline. Like, what did it do?
Okay.
Let's figure it out. If it's not what I want, we'll go back in and make some more corrections. But hopefully this is actually looking good. I'm
No,
treating
but I
this
mean,
laptop as
where
a
is it
source.
stored on the firm? Like, it's not.
it's not.
Doesn't need to be.
REW
So
is just
REW
taking
is just
measurements.
it's just sending a signal out of it as an HDMI signal, like as if this is an Apple TV or a Kaleidescape.
Okay,
And it's just sending it into the device,
I got that.
and then it reproduces it, and it captures the signal into the mic and does its stuff from there.
But then how do you?
Measurement only. There's no. If there's any changes, he'll make it in what the remote control.
Oh yeah, I can't make any
or
changes in REW. All the changes are going to be made back in Dirac. I'm just measuring.
So you
Sorry.
gotta go back to rack. That's your EQ.
For what it's worth, that looks a lot better than what we had before. The bass is a little goofy, but we already knew there were some issues in the bass, and actually I just took a measurement to take one. It was in the wrong place. So now we got to get this back up to where it was supposed to be, which is more like this. But like, look at how smooth that high frequency response is. Like everything above 100 hertz to me looks fine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that. So we need to listen to it. I got to make sure you like it. We may shelve it down a little bit more, do a little bit more to it. But overall, like I think that we now have something that's pretty passable. The bass, I'm not happy with, but we'll play with that. We'll see what we can do with that.
So you're using REW almost to verify like what Dirac is showing.
You have to, because what Dirac shows you and what is reality typically are not the same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the PEQ section, we've got nothing currently on, so we're going to turn one on. We're going to go in, and we know we want it to be 54. Oops. Doesn't need to be that exact. We want the Q to be around 2. And we want it to be -7.
This is where discrete subwoofer control would be super advantageous, right? Because you're
Yeah,
controlling
but-
subs in tandem here.
Yeah, well, but I am doing discrete control in a sense because I'm doing the EQ separately on each one. But because they're in the same general location in the front of the room, there's no real advantage to anything.
Oh yeah, because you're doing it the subwoofer, not in the preamp. Okay, that makes sense.
We got kind of like a best of both worlds coming out of this one in a sense. Like we still got that big dip there, but we fixed the low end stuff here and we reduced it here by, looks like 3-4 dB or so, 3 dB I guess. But right here, which is right your crossover point, that's not looking good.
The results plot and said, well, I need to cross this at 80 and manually use a remote to set the crossover.
Well, 80 is just more, it's a standard area.
Common.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a hard and fast number that's the right number. You sometimes would go lower if like you have full range speakers and you feel like they would do well with it. Especially in a room like this, that might be a reasonable thing to do. But we saw that there was a lot of garbage down there. Mm-hmm. Response looked terrible. And the sub response actually looks pretty good. So letting the sub take over is helping us here. So at this point, we're going to listen now because it looks good, but like you might think the bass is anemic, the highs might be too much, it might be a little brittle. Like we got to go in now.
So what I was probably perceiving, there was a roughly 60 to 90 hertz null.
Yeah.
Isn't that most of your bass, like usable bass?
Yep.
So that's why maybe I'm feeling like my helicopter scene in Maverick, it sounds sissy.
Yeah. So why don't we do some listening, see what you think, and if you want the bass levels up, we'll get them up if you want them. If you like them the way they are, then great. I mean, at this point, you're flat to 25 hertz with a little bit of roll off below that. That's pretty good.
So if you're plus or minus 3 dB, you call that flat?
That's pretty good, yeah. I wouldn't be too unhappy with that.
Well, I don't know where you set the bar, like, you know, and how much you chase it.
I mean, if we did an average, a spatial average right now, I'm sure that would flatten out dramatically more. And we could, I can look at this and tell what's gonna happen when we do that. So I don't need to right this moment. I might do some additional measurements, but for now I want to get, because it's getting late, we've been here a while. I'm sure you guys have other things you'd rather do. So let's get some listening in, make sure you're happy with it. And
lunch.
Yeah.
Eat lunch.
Rusty's famished over here.
Do you want to go with the Ray to see if we can find some snacks?
Yeah, we
We've
should.
had 12 snacks since we got
Yeah, the rotten,
I
rotten
had
cheese.
some rotten cheese. A little slice of rotten cheese.
There's some more over there.
I love it.
Greatest showman scene, is that the
go for it.
You want to try that? All right.
Rusty scene? He starts crying every time.
I like the opening for the bass, but this is a good one too.
Well, we got Dirac going.
And here's my good old
So what was causing that?
Primaire is what's causing that.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Let's do a little power-roo.
Reboot the Primaire.
How much was that thing again? I love it. It's great. I think everybody should get one.
You're now convincing me whenever somebody asks for that, I should be like, no. So my go-tos for the most part are the Marantz, the AV10, I think for the money is the best. I'm going to call it mid-range because I tend to deal with the more expensive processors.
Right.
Because it's got direct with bass control, it's got the 4 discrete bass outputs. It also has Odyssey with the PC software. You can actually do PEQ like we were doing on the subs. You can do a full manual calibration with it that way. So for me, Marantz has always been good at making a reliable product. It just didn't always have the features that you would need for doing good calibration.
Yeah.
Now it's all that. It's like good performance, good reliability, good EQ.
What about the Anthem, what is it?
AVM 70.
70 in that same price range, right?
So I don't like it as much because even though the technical performance is very similar, so similar noise and distortion, similar capabilities, ARC is much less manually correctable. Like I can do a lot more with the Marantz than I can with a...
That makes sense.
So you're looking at tunability.
Tunability, yeah.
Man.
That's fair.
The lights are on
So
the
we
same.
need to get you a 20 amp circuit in here.
Yeah. So it's a little bright.
We can work on that. But overall,
You got your bass
got
back.
your bass back. That's good.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
bass is better. Is it too much or not enough or perfect?
I can use more always.
Well, it's also having really a bass intensive scene.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I'm gonna try old
Do your old Top Gun. My
Top
goodness.
Gunneroo.
All right, so Matt just told Matthew Poes that he wanted a little bit more bass in there, so we went into the subwoofer, bumped him up about 8 dB. And so the bottom line is the before, new line is the after. Let's see if he likes that.
I might just not like these subs.
Yep. It is possible it's not enough sub for you.
Yeah, I think, but would an easy test be to just plug in one of these beautiful extension cords that you can get at obsessgarage.com and run it into your bedroom circuit and just see if it's powered? If it's
Talking about one of these big things right here. That thing's crazy.
Pro lock extension cords.
That's awesome.
I got 5 of them here. I can do that later, but I want to show them upstairs before things and then.
So it's been a long day. What's the verdict? What's the wrap up here?
Well, very clearly we found a huge problem, and I had the same problem, in this giant null from 50 to 90 hertz. So that's, part of the reason why I'm saying these subwoofers are too lean for me.
But I think it's cool that, like, you knew something was wrong. I feel this way a lot of times. Like, something's not right, but you can't, like, I don't know the words to describe it. I don't know how to quantify it. I don't know what to say. But, seeing Matthew pull up and do these measurements, like, well, but you're not wrong. There's something off.
Well, I wasn't disappointed in the system at all. I just knew that something was I don't like these subwoofers. That was what I said.
Right.
And I don't like these, because Steve James was telling me, he's like, these subs are amazing. I was like, oh, freaking,
You're like, I'm not seeing it.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So I think we found the Dirac issue, and now I'm gonna get Perry to come out here tomorrow and give me, or Monday, Tuesday, get me some power.
I wonder how many people, are swapping gear out because it's just not set up properly. Because you didn't know to go change it to manually set this.
I think that's a really common issue, actually. I had a client once, it was lower end system, but it was a decent system for the money, probably a $15,000, $20,000 system total. And he had KEF in-wall speakers, and we didn't have the budget for the bigger ones, but I wanted to use their better R series, so I used the square in ceiling in wall, which they can actually work that way if you've got the depth, and he did. And so we did LCRs like that. I said to him, look, they have no bass at all. So he didn't want to pay for enough services for me to come out and calibrate it, because it was a lower end system. Wouldn't have made sense to go and spend $5,000 to fly me out and calibrate the whole system. So he said, no, I've been doing this for years, it's fine. I just really wanted your help picking the right equipment. So I made some recommendations, and for his budget, and given that it was a really tiny room and I didn't want to load up a tiny room with big speakers, I said, let's do these KEF in-walls. They're a good speaker, they just don't have any bass. And then you're going to have to make sure you bass manage them correctly in your receiver, which was like an Onkyo kind of mid-level receiver, and he had monoprice subs. So he called me up a month later. I had never heard how things went. He goes, I got to tell you, I'm really disappointed. You're an expert, you made a recommendation. I just don't think it's very good. I'm thinking of talking to somebody else and getting something else in here. And I said, can I just take a look? Can we set up a video call and I'll go through your menu with you and see? So we did that, and he's got his computer camera basically turned around facing the screen so I can see what it's setting at, and I can see the bass management is completely off. So he's trying to run these little 8-inch coaxial in-wall speakers, full range.
Yeah.
They can't. My goodness.
Yeah.
So then I also noticed the subwoofer isn't set correctly, and then I teach him how to do some REW measurements. We get the bass management set. That was a big improvement. But of course, the moment we start doing REW measurements, we find there's some nulls, there's other issues. We go in, make a few more adjustments, get everything kind of dialed in. All of a sudden, it's the best system we've ever heard. It's the exact same equipment. Nothing changed. It just wasn't set up correctly.
And sometimes all it takes is one setting, because as we saw, and we thought Dirac was setting it, it just wasn't doing it.
Yeah, the bass management was off here.
It was just off. And then you turn it on, it's there's a drastic improvement in that one setting.
And then we went through and made a bunch of, the other thing I'll say, so with Dirac on, with the old one, the response was actually pretty rough. It wasn't bad, but it was pretty rough. I went and made a bunch of changes to it, but basically primarily just re-ran Dirac fresh, admittedly with a better mic, which could have made a big difference.
Yep, for sure.
And the end result was a pretty much dead smooth response. other than in the bass, which we then did some additional work and got to be pretty good too. Overall, as you pointed out, like the response is within plus or minus 2-3 dB,
Yeah.
which for in room from a single measurement point is actually very good.
When we ran the direct with Eric, remember I thought it was just way too bright, so he had to do a lot of work. And so like the first initial correction was pretty darn close. Like I felt like beat up, so we had to do all kinds of correction with the wrong mic. And so now, I mean, the running REW and confirming, and then just the little tweaks you made, it didn't require a whole heck of a lot over and above on the high frequency what Direct gave us.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to see the confirmation REW gives you.
It does.
So anyway, now we have a room. So I think what today is I spent $60,000 on this system, and I feel like, okay, even though we didn't do a lot, I know it's confirming. Okay, I know I'm getting my money's worth. And then we identified some ways to maybe possibly improve. Maybe the subwoofers need a little more power. We can see the lights dimming. That's a telltale sign that the lights dim. They're on the same circuit. So I'm going to add a 20 amp circuit to it and smile every time I listen to it.
Yeah.
Sounds cool, man. Matthew, this has been fun. Seriously, man.
Yeah.
What's been really cool is just seeing your brain at work. I know these guys are going to go, well, why didn't we get to see the step-by-step process? Well, that's because we've been here for 6 hours.
Yeah.
We can't show you that on camera, but to see the level of expertise, they went out to the garage and you and I were in REW and you're looking at distortion, you're looking at harmonics and stuff that's way over my head, but you know how to read that and measure that and take the data. I think a lot of times we can look at the charts and go, but I don't know what that means. And it's just been cool, you looking at certain things going, okay, there's a problem area there. Let's go to the subwoofer. Let's try this. Let's change this. Let's go to crossover settings. So you know what to look for based on what you're seeing. And so I think that's the huge value of a calibrator like yourself. So like I said, this has been fun for me. So we appreciate you coming up. I appreciate Matt paying for it. So it's been good.
I will say this. You guys are like the typical hardcore DIYers, and you know this from the forums. Like, there's some really good DIYers out there that are doing really incredible systems. And even though like I'm a pro and like within the industry, the other pros all respect me, which means I must be doing something right. I still get nervous when I go in front of people because I'm like, what if I'm not like that good? Like, what if they've actually like developed so much DIY skill that they're as good or better, and they spend all this money, it wasn't even worth it. Yeah. So it also is gratifying to come in and be like, okay, so there's problems and I can fix them, and you're happy with the fixes. Because the other side could be I come in and I'm like, I don't know, you did a good job, it's fine. I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah. I think another thing that we verified, even just using REW, is just how well the per listens measure in room.
They do. They're a very good speaker. So one of the interesting things that we figured out early on was we turned Dirac off and it got better. And part of why it got better initially was because it's a good speaker to begin with, and there were some issues with the initial calibration. So that is, I will just say, because I calibrate lots of different systems with different speakers, that's not normal. Like, my normal to walk into is a nightmare. And you're just dealing with like bad speakers, bad room, terrible response, and you're just hoping Dirac can do something with this mess.
Right.
In this case, we walked in with something that was actually pretty decent to begin with, and it was just like icing on the cake, just adjusting things here or there to get it right.
We kind of briefly touched on like acoustic treatments to kind of a little extra icing on the cake.
Yeah, sure.
Matt loves his icing, so maybe we could put a little more. What would you do?
He's running out of icing.
he just like scrapes the icing off the cake.
Trying to not eat icing.
I love it.
Is there anything that you would recommend for Matt to kind of make the most out of this room without
maybe consider
making it hideous looking?
We talked about that earlier. So I think that there's any room that's not treated and is nothing but stuff of life, but is this open concept. And you can hear it in my voice right now talking, and it's probably going to get picked up on the camera.
Oh, for sure.
Well. Yeah. There's a bit of an echo or reverb in the room. It's not like a literal echo, but it's more the reverb effect that happens. So if you can bring that down a little bit, which is really nothing more than absorption, it's going to help, but you don't want to overdo it. We talked about that. So this room probably is going to be between 500 and 600 milliseconds. And if we can drop that down another 100 milliseconds from there to like, call it 350, 400 milliseconds, something like that, I think you're going to get a result that's a little better. Would I like to do more yet? Yes. putting in some diffusion. Like, but the problem
Yeah.
is
It's a living room.
It's
It's
a
a
living
family room,
We
yeah.
can't do that. So what I would look for are products that are aesthetically pleasing to do in here. Best way to do that, in my opinion, is rather than try to hide them, lean into them. Like, get really cool looking acoustic treatments that actually make the room look better and make that the way you go. So like, build a feature wall here. It would be kind of cool to make this more of a feature wall, but make the feature wall an acoustic product as well. And that's actually not that hard to do. There's lots of products in the market that we can do that with.
Yeah, we'll save that for the next video.
Well, yeah, man. Well, we're just having fun, man. At Matt's expense.
I've learned a lot today.
No, like I said, we've hung out all day. We've been to Rusty's house. We've been here at Matt's house. We took Matthew Poes over to Obsessed Home Theater Lab. And so, man, we're going to have more conversations because we're going to need your advice and input as we build out that room. And we're going to have some fun. We'll take you upstairs real quick before you go and just show you Matt Mormon's theater room up there. But guys, hope you enjoyed the video. What's that?
The theater office.
Office
Office theater.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Have a good one. Appreciate you.